بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا محمد سيد الأولين والآخرين وحبيب رب العالمين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد طب القلوب ودوائها وعافية الأبدان وشفائها ونور الأبصار وضيائها وقوت الأرواح وغذائها وآله وصحبه وبارك وسلم ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good morning. Hope you guys all had, and gals, had a lovely evening, restful evening. The sun's out today, which is wonderful. Alhamdulillah. And you can almost feel the morning you wake up, can't you? When the sun's out, it's like, it's going to be a good day. Isn't it? Allahu Akbar. It's really something special. And that's why perhaps Allah Ta'ala does alternate states so that we can come back to joy, come back to gratitude. If it was always sunny, you wouldn't appreciate it. Like, I have family in Phoenix. It's nice for the first month, and that's like, oh my God, I kind of like some rain sometimes, some clouds, and some days at home with a cup of tea, and so alhamdulillah for the alternation. Alhamdulillah. Anyone do any qigong last night or yesterday? Yeah? Who? Good for you. It's good. So I want to keep these things in your pockets. These are good tools, inshallah ta'ala. And to have your own relationship with is appropriate, not having a fixed thing. So I hope you guys had, and gals, I'm going to stop saying guys and gals, had your coffee today, or tea. This one is a bit more heady, because I want to introduce a new topic that I've never actually taught before, not in this capacity at least. And it's a very interesting topic because it lays the foundation for all Islamic medicine. It lays the foundation for all of Hikmah medicine and even deeper philosophical inquiries. You'll find this knowledge at the beginning of the Qanun of Ibn Sina, for example, the famous physician and metaphysician, philosopher. He begins talking about the elements, which we talked about last year, and the qualities and the temperaments and all these different ways that Allah Ta'ala creates in the world, these kind of ingredients of the world. And then he talks about quwwat, faculties. He talks about the breath, and he talks about quwwat, these faculties inside of us that we all have as human beings. So we typically, as Western people, know there's 5 senses. True? What do you think of when I say there's actually 10 senses? Have you ever heard that before? No? Okay. Interesting. 6, you've heard the 6th sense. Yeah, what's the 6th sense? Instinctual. So that's one of the other 5. Al-Quwwa al-Wahmiyya, which we'll get to. That gut instinct sense, right? There's 4 others as well. So today we'll be diving into all of that. I'll be just introducing it and helping us just grasp the roots of that knowledge and maybe make it applicable in a couple ways, inshallah ta'ala, because I want this to be something that you can also take in your pocket and understand. Because we're talking about knowledge of the self, ultimately, aren't we? In medicine, we're talking about balancing the self and healing the self and transforming the self, but you can't know a thing. You can't do those things if you don't know the thing that you're trying to do it to. So we have to know the self. Knowledge of the self is fundamental. And there's a deeper knowledge of the self that comes through ibadah and worship and the afkar and the awrad and the ahzab and khidmah and all these, suhbah of the mashayikh and the awliya. And there's a more corporeal, kind of more human way to access that self-knowledge, right? The same way we have a ruh and a jism, There's more of that jismani dimension of that knowledge. So that's what these 10 senses, inshallah, can help us get a firmer grasp on. So the 5 outward senses are called al-hawas al-zahira, the outer senses. What are the other 5 called? I called the first 5 outward, inward. So al-hawas al-batina. Al-hawas al-batina, the 5 inward senses. But the 5 outward senses make up the again, the ingredients of our customary knowledge, the ada knowledge, the cause and effect, the normal things. Like my baby now is learning, if I pick up something and I drop it, or I let go of it, it drops. He'll just do that for 10 minutes. He's formulating a knowledge within him of customary ada experience. And so ada has to always come through felt experience. It's not ada unless it's experienced in the body through the 5 senses. And when senses function normal under proper conditions and are relayed properly, we can come to a proper understanding of the world. Right? Someone was to go outside and say, the sky is green. Does this person have sound knowledge, sound access to their senses? Is he a sensible person? So there's some sort of correspondence to reality that the senses give us access to. Think of the 5 senses as like portals to the world, right? And typically they're to which world? The mulk. The 5 senses are portals into the mulk, the worldly domain. We have the mulk, we have the malakut, which is the spiritual, and then you have the jabarut, which is not really part of our point of inquiry, our place of inquiry today. We're interested today in the mulk. How do we understand our orientation in the physical world? The 5 senses allow that as their channels, portals, access points of the world. If you didn't have any senses, you could not orient to the world. You'd have no idea where you were. You'd maybe know that you're a self. Like Ibn Sina has this thought experiment he writes in his works where it's the floating man kind of paradox. If there was a floating man in space and he didn't know if he was right side up or upside down, and there's nothing touching him, so he has no sense of right, left, he's not oriented in space at all. And it's dark, pitch dark. Would he know that he's a self? He would, right? He knows I'm conscious and there's something to me. So it's the body that ultimately gives us this truest grounding in the world. And the 5 senses, inshallah ta'ala, allow that person to have a foundation of what is real as that person travels in the world, the suluk, to higher modes of reality and higher modes of health, both of which I believe are connected. What you'll find in Western ideology, though, is now this phenomenon of scientism. Have you heard of scientism before? Scientism. It's reducing all truth to just what exists in the 5 senses. Nothing else can be true. And if you make a proposition of a truth statement, they will say, what's the proof for that? Meaning, what is the sensory proof of that? What is the lab proof for that? What is the experimental proof for that? Right? They've reduced and collapsed all of diversity, all of the knowledge, the mulk, the malakut, the jabarut, the angels, and the jinn, and all those different creations of Allah Ta'ala, to what can I see, what can I feel, touch, taste. Everything else cannot exist. Cannot exist in that worldview. And that is the worldview of the modern world. And the modern science, for sure. Is that our worldview? That's not our worldview. Even our Islamic science would take on a whole different quality, a whole different orientation. I mean, what is it? I have a teacher that once told me that you need Iman to be a scientist. Iman has the keys to knowledge of the world itself. Because there's certain things in the world that certain people can't see. Some people who have basira, for example, they can see things that are real that the person with no insight can't see. So how can they be the standard by which they determine what's possible and what's not possible in the world? Right? People talking about, like, for example, just for example that maybe you can all appreciate, seeing Sayyidina Khidr. Do we believe that it's possible? I believe that's possible. That's in the world, right? People can see him in wakeful states. Is he alive? Yes, we know he's alive. He roams. Well, he comes to people. Is that real? Is that scientifically true? You can never prove it scientifically. But is it true? Yeah, we believe it's true. If you believe it's true, it's true. If you don't believe it, then you don't believe it. But if you believe it's true, it is true. It's totally true. More true than science confirming it with its own stamp of approval. It's imani stamped. It's a higher stamp. So it all depends on how you're coming to the world and what kind of framework you're working with. You see? You guys with me so far? Okay. So let's jump into the five senses. We don't have much time, unfortunately. So the five senses, which all are interpreted by a faculty. It's called al-mudrik al-mutasarrif al-ashya. And it's a faculty, an inward faculty that's dispersed throughout the whole body that is able to perceive and interpret the information coming in through the channels of the senses. Right? There's a part of you that kind of interprets those. So, smell. Is it a beautiful smell, or is it natan? Is it a foul smell? Oh, this tastes sweet. Or is it salty? Or is it bitter? Right? How do we know? Well, we have taste buds and stuff like that, but there's actually an inner faculty as well that can distinguish them. We have, of course, the greatest of the senses. Which is the greatest of the five senses? Sight. Someone's saying touch. What else? Hearing. Yeah, hearing is king. Hearing is king, right? Hearing is the most noble of the five. And there's two modes of perception outwardly. Of course, there's loud sounds, and then there's soft. I can't do soft sounds with the mic in my face. Soft sounds. The usual range is 20 to 20,000 hertz. And there's all these different types of tones and timbres and textures of sound that are available to the ear. But it is the highest, right? Allah Ta'ala says, إِنَّ السَّمْعَ وَالْبَصَرَ وَالْفُؤَادَ كُلُّ أُولَئِكَ كَانَ عَنْهُ مَسْئُولًا. Sama, hearing, basar, vision, fu'ad, the heart. Those are the three things we're asked about. We're asked about on Qiyamah. Those are the two major senses we're asked about on Qiyamah. And the other three are less important, actually. Right? But sight, number two, sight. There's, according to the philosophers, 11, and the hukama, 11 modes of perception of the eye. Light, dark, colors, bodies, surfaces, forms, descriptions, dimensions, movements, stillnesses, and numbers. Right? And so it is through these senses, again, that we're able to see. Now, do I see you? Do you see me? Is it one-to-one correspondence with reality? Can you trust that? Do you trust that you see me as I am, physically, not in my reality? You don't know me. Inshallah, you come to know me. I can come to know you. But like, do you see me? Do you all see me the same way? Interesting question. Do I see you all the same way? The angles and the lights and the shadows and the way you're sitting now, and things are different, right? It's all perspectival. There's a perspectival kind of diversity that the senses allow for. But it is something true, and it's something that will be asked about and we have access to, right? What's interesting about the eye is that you can actually close it, right? You can close it. So if you see something that you don't want to see, you can close your eyes. Can the hearing do that? Can the ears do that? Yesterday, I think we covered that, right? We can't do that. We can't do that. We can't close our ears. So it's very important that we protect our ears by making sure that we're in good company, making sure that we're not putting on something that's foul or not exposing ourselves to something that we can't turn off or turn away from at some point. Because it's namana. But hearing, they say, is akin to obedience. When you hear someone, like, do you hear me now? Like when a child asks, again, that example from yesterday, the child asks for your attention and you turn down to them, I hear you, what's up? Oh, okay, you're with me, you know? Or when Allah says something as a command and then you say, Sami'na wa ata'na, ghufranaka rabbana. Right? It's like we want to be able to hear because we want to be able to obey. And it's no coincidence that the wahi that we've been given is oral. And it's heard, right? It's a heard experience. It's not a felt, it's not a taste experience. It could be, potentially. It's possible. It could have been taste. Here, taste this honey from God and come to know reality. Or smell this amazing oud from Jannah and you come to know and become a believer. Oh, it could have been. No, but you heard words of the speech of God. And you say, I believe in this. I'm going to follow this. So hearing is lofty. Smell. Through smell, we perceive beautiful and therapeutic odors, like frankincense. You burn, the laban, frankincense, which opens the gates of heaven and attracts the angels. It's a beautiful way to actually clean the air and set up the environment. Taste. There's 7 modes of taste: sweet, bitterness, saltiness, acidity, acridity, rottenness, and freshness. And then touch has 10 sensations: heat, cold, humidity, dryness, smoothness, roughness, hardness, softness, heaviness, lightness. Right? So these sensory modes of experience help us orient to what is around us, what is in the world, what are we up against, what are we up with, and helping us to then interpret that information, which then is done by the 5 inward senses, to make a good judgment and be able to determine our relationships with things, which is what hikmah is all about, what adab is all about. What is my relationship with the world? What is my relationship with all of you now? Our relationship with each other in this space for the next few days. Our relationship with our kids, with our neighbors, with our friends, our coworkers, our parents, everything. How do we determine? It's established by these 5 senses. But then these have to be interpreted. These 5 senses in a vacuum don't mean much. Right? Even these quote-unquote scientists, that we are purely empirical. We don't bring in any reason, any interpretation into the facts of what is. It's mustahil, it's impossible. There's always an interpretation. Like the scientists can't see their own blind spot. That's the problem. You always interpret, right? And so what is this interpreting power? And let's come to understand that, inshallah ta'ala. So the 5 inward senses are complements of the 5 outer senses. And they constitute the junud, as Imam al-Ghazali calls them, the 5 inward armies of the soul. And they aid the qalb. And again, understanding what's happening in the marvels of the heart. Ajaib al-Qulub, Imam al-Ghazali talks about the heart is the king, right? The heart is the king. And then you have the ministers, and then you have the police and the army, and you have all these different quwwat, all these different armies, you can say, or faculties that are at the disposal of the king, making sure the whole kingdom's in harmony. And if not, telling the king. So you think of it that way. So these 5 inner senses are the junud, are kind of the armies, and they have They're general, and they report back to the king, the heart. And it should be also noted that these are not intellect. So the five inward senses are not aql. They occupy this place between the five senses and the intellect, right? They're like the bridge, the barzakh, if you will, between the higher intellect, this higher mode of knowing, which is really a nur from Allah Ta'ala. That's aql. It's not this logical ones and zeros, binary, linear, rational thing. That's how we use that colloquially. Aql is kind of someone who's intellectual or rational, thinks in a certain specific way. That's not aql in the way that the Muslims and the ulama have expressed it. But you have the senses, you have the five inward senses, and then you have aql. Okay, so we're not talking about the aql today. So the five, you can write these down so you can stay with me because it's going to get a little bit hairy if it hasn't already gotten hairy. We'll make sense of it, inshallah ta'ala. Even if I go into tomorrow, I'll make sense of it for everybody, inshallah ta'ala. So the first one is called Al-Hiss Al-Mushtarak. Al-Hiss Al-Mushtarak, which is the common sense. Now that's not, or we can call it also the collective sense. I prefer the collective sense, but some people call it the common sense. Now this is not common sense like, duh, someone does something, you say, duh, of course that's common sense, or not common sense. That's not what we're talking about here, which we'll get to in a second. Let me name them first. The collective sense, al-hiss al-mushtarak, and you have al-quwa al-khayaliya, al-quwa al-khayaliya, or the imaginal faculty, or also it's called al-quwa al-musawwira, musawwira, surah, musawwira. It's image-based, this one. This is the one I want to focus on at the end, inshallah. Number 3 is fikr, thought. Fikr. Number 4 is the wahmi quwwa, al-quwwa al-wahmiya. Al-quwwa al-wahmiya, you can just W-A-H-M, which is the estimative faculty. Estimative. It's estimating. It's trying to distinguish and determine something. We'll get to it, inshallah. And finally, memory. It's memory. Al-quwa al-hafidha al-dhakira. Right? That's memory. These are the 5 inward senses that you'll find from Ghazali, Imam Ghazali, to Ibn Sina, to Razi, to more contemporary Sayyidina Ibn Attas. If you read his book on metaphysics, this is what they all talk about. They use a very similar language. This is something that the metaphysicians have used for centuries, right? And the physicians all use this as well, because what's interesting about this is that in your case assessment with the patient, you can determine what's off. Like if in their personality, they're like, for example, really, what's the word? They're very dangerous, right? They're very on the edge. They're very edgy people. They do dangerous things often. They're not, so their estimative faculty isn't probably fully online, or there's something up with that, because that's the one that determines like safe, unsafe, or pleasure, pain. Yeah, and there's other applications of it, of course, but like these are things that the physicians have used forever, because we want to know like where's the knot, where's the lesion inwardly, so we can support it. Because each of these faculties also occupy places in the body that are correlated with organs, of course. I mean, we talked about that a little bit last year, but you know, the organs are the places of the quwwat. 2 different organs have different emotions that are attached to them, and different sensory, meaning batini senses, that are associated with them as well. So if the liver was off, you'd have this wahmi capacity decreased, and they're probably have anger issues, and they probably have right upper quadrant pain in their abdomen, and so on and so forth. Maybe they have some jaundice, maybe they have some effects in their stools. So you take the whole case and you say, this person's liver is off. And so let's maybe change the diet a little bit. Let's give some herbs, maybe do some acupuncture, homeopathy, whatever is needed to support that specific part of the body. You see, so it's all connected. Is that clear? Is that kind of landing? I think I'm losing people. Inshallah, we'll come back around, inshallah. So, al-hiss al-mushtarak is the faculty that gathers all the senses in every one moment. So it takes hearing, seeing, touch, taste, smell, and it puts it into one image at any one time. There's always a state that you're in. Your hal. What is the hal now? Your hal now, if you were to answer that question fully, is going to be an amalgamation of all this sensory information that's coming in, as well as other things. But there's all this sensory information that's coming in. Is it too hot? Is it too cold? Am I comfortable? Am I hungry? Am I feeling something empty in my belly? All these sensory, is the cushion not really there, right? Dry lips, like what are you noticing right now? That's going to be all part of al-hiss al-mushtarak, the collective sense, which is kind of this picture at any one moment of the state of the body as interpreted by the senses, as perceived by the senses. Okay? And what's formed is a surah. What's formed is described as a surah, an image, like a photo. Just capture one moment. And every moment is a new surah, because al-hiss al-mushtarak does not record it. It's just constantly flashing with the new had. What's the had? Whatever's happening right now, al-hiss al-mushtarak will display it. And then we have, so I'll leave that for now. There's more we can get into, but I'll leave that there for now. Al-hiss al-mushtarak, right? It takes all the 5 outer senses and gathers them into one image. Okay? And then you have al-quwa al-khayaliyah, the imaginal. And this serves as basically your imagination. It's not your imagination only, but it is the imaginal part of you. It's also the part of you that dreams, that comes up with the dreams. Al-quwa al-khayaliyah. And it's the part of you that will move these images and interpret these images. Right? It'll take images from al-hiss al-mushtarak and save them, because al-hiss al-mushtarak doesn't save them themselves. It just produces images. What is the hal every moment? It just produces image. Now, image. Now, image. But it doesn't save them. And quwa al-khayaliyah will save them. Right? So you have memory of how you felt yesterday. Quwa al-khayaliyah. Maybe you can, like, in a week from now, think about how was I feeling in Dr. Mazen's class. Maybe I was a little bit bored because he was just going off about his senses stuff. And I felt this way or that way. So that part of you will be quwa al-khayaliyah, right? And this is the part actually I want to focus on here, because we live in a very image-based world, don't we? Very image-based world. For computers and screens and even photographs and videos and television, all the images that we have in our minds came organically through our senses. Very important. I want you to all stay with me right here. This is the most important point of the whole thing. Okay? In the pre-modern world, or even just like 80 years ago or something, 100 years ago, all of the images in our minds came through our customary experience, through our senses. You wouldn't see images. Now, what's happening? We are inundated with images. Our own images from our felt experience, our senses? No, other people's images. And whose images? Some of the worst people. I mean, like all of us and them. But it's like some of the worst images are coming out from other people's experiences and interpretations and projections. And whoever has the power of media and communication now is just broadcasting all their images for everyone to perceive. And this is what we call programming. This is programming, right? Where the original programming should come from our own fitrah, through our felt sense, inspired by God. You see? And so this is something very important, that we don't have a sense of the world anymore. We're so inundated with images. It's like we're like, I gotta disconnect from things. I can't handle more images. And I'm somewhat addicted to these other artificial images. So I'll turn off my interest in being out in nature and feeling the wind and hearing the wind through the trees and feeling the wind in my, breaking through my my jacket and smelling the cedar and all that sensory experience. I'm gonna just bypass that, and I can just sit down and watch a nature documentary, on Netflix, and I can just have some sort of experience of that. But it's not your experience. It's some photographer sitting out of a helicopter. He's taking it, but even is he recording it through his own body? He's using instruments. Everything's being mediated now in a sensory way through instruments. But even then, there's a level of separation between us and the real world. And this, unfortunately, even happens in science, going back to the scientists. It's like they don't even trust their own senses. They're all using tools and instruments and microscopes and stuff like that. So even their knowledge isn't direct from the world. But the point is, with the imaginal, we were supposed to make our own images, have our own memories, have our own content of the soul to work with. That was unique to us. And now we're living in a time where everyone, you can put up a meme about some show and everyone laughs because everyone knows. Like a Seinfeld or something, a meme or something everyone used to watch at some point. And everyone would laugh or get it, or like Friends or something. One of these old, I'm showing my age, but it's old shows. So everyone used to watch that stuff. So everyone knows who Joey is or whatever. And would laugh about a meme about Joey. We have these images in our minds. We can't get rid of them. And so understanding this is really important. Why? Because if we're going to come back to a sound sense of self and a sound connection to the natural world and a real connection to Rabbul Izzah, the Lord and the creator of the whole world, we have to come back to our own sensory experience, creating our own images through the collective sense and storing those memories in our own khayali imaginal faculty to work with. So we can get rid of all that junk and work with beautiful, tayyib, organic feelings and experiences, as opposed to these artificial programs. You guys following? You gals following? A little bit. We'll get there, inshallah. We'll talk about this more, inshallah. I just wanted to make that point. I think it's a really interesting point to make, inshallah ta'ala. So, how much time? 5? Oh my goodness. Okay, let's go through them a little bit quicker and then we can maybe review them tomorrow, yeah? Just to finish up the talk today. You have then al-quwa al-wahmiya, which is the estimative faculty. And the quwa al-wahmiya, what it'll do is, it's like, we can think of it as the instinct, the gut instinct. It'll determine what's sound and not sound, what's safe, not safe, what's true and not true, and make a judgment. It'll make a judgment. Right? There's a part of you that's, you don't have to sit there and ponder. If you see a lion, or if you see someone with a knife, God forbid, it's like, you're not going to sit there and say, oh, how curious. I wonder where I've seen this before. What should I do here? It's like there's going to be this natural instinct that comes out. right? And that's the estimative faculty. The wahmi faculty, that's going to help you mobilize towards them or away from them or whatever, right? It's gonna mobilize some sort of change in the relationship into a conscious relationship with that thing. And then you have fikr, right? Fikr. So fikr, thought, is not aql, but what the fikr does is that it can take the content of the imaginal quwwa and khayaliya, and expound on them. It can break them apart and synthesize images into one other image. So when you're sitting in contemplation and reflection, you're using your own experiences, your own content of the soul, if you will, to reflect deeper, or taking something from what you've read in the Quran, right? That has some sort of image in your mind. You can use that then with your own experience and those images of your own experience, your own memories, beautiful memories on the beach with your family, having a good time, and there was just shukr in your heart, and alhamdulillah, so grateful to Allah Ta'ala, and using that, and then you read the ayah, وَلَئِن شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ. If you are grateful, I'm surely, I will surely increase you. And then you're just sitting there and you're reflecting on the ayah, and you're merging these two images, these two memories you have, one from hearing and reading the Quran and touching the Quran and contemplating, and then this other experience. You can have this fikri quwwa applied to reflect, right? It's not aql, it's not intellect yet, it's still thought, but it's the quwwa al-fikriya that allows you to break down these images, to use them, and to create new meanings out of them. Right? Through fikr, we create new meanings, ma'ani, for us. And then finally, al-quwwa al-hafidha al-dhakira is the memory, is our memory. And so the meanings that we get from fikr, we don't store, it doesn't store them. That thing, it just kind of breaks up and synthesizes into new meanings, but it doesn't store them. So all those new meanings are stored, as well as the wahmi kind of judgments of friend or foe in the memory, which they call al-quwwa al-hafidha al-dhakira. So those are the 5 internal senses, right? Al-hiss al-mushtarak, drawing all the 5 outer senses into one image. Al-quwwa al-khayaliya, the one that stores these images, and you can imagine. Al-quwwa al-wahmiya, the estimative faculty that allows you to determine friend or foe and make a judgment, or pleasure, pain, and all of this, that gut instinct. Fikr, which takes the images of the khayal and creates new meanings, and then the memory faculty that stores those meanings for you. Right? So all of these are like the substrata of the intellect. It's not intellect yet. It's like right below the intellect, but it's higher than the senses. All these are levels of experience that we have. And so there's a whole world inside of you, as we're taught, right? There's a whole world inside of you. The anthropic principle, that you are the whole universe. Right? You are the little universe. The universe is the big man. There's a correspondence between the two things. Imam Ali's famous line of poetry. You consider yourself to be this insignificant thing. تحسب نفسك أنك جرم صغير وفيك انطواء العالم الأكبر. But within you resides the whole cosmos. Right? Just understanding that your access to the mulk, and your access to the malakut, and your access to all these things through yourself grants you that capacity, grants you that station of Khalifatullah fil ard, inshallah ta'ala, in potential. That you are the whole world, and there's a whole world inside of you. And so by becoming more conscious of the 5 senses, really, and I encourage you today, yesterday we talked about the breath. We talked about moving the energy in the body, and we did some qigong. And I encourage you to continue to do that, and build on that by trying to have more sensory felt experience in the body and create your own memories, your own images in the body, right? And think about when you go back home, how do I want to go back? How do I want my family situation to be? Do I want it to be that I'm mediating the whole entire apparatus of my tarbiyah of my children through screens? Or now that I learned that I don't want that content in my child, even later when they're adults, because they're going to be stuck with these images that they can't get rid of and not being able to really make use or contemplate. How are we going to contemplate Seinfeld? It's like, it doesn't make sense. Like, how do you watch Seinfeld, you read Quran, it's like, it doesn't really match. But if you were to go walk in the park and have the experience feeding the geese and having a nice picnic and being grateful and seeing your kids play, that is a beautiful felt experience that then you can read Quran and reflect otherwise and create new meanings for your heart that'll elevate your state, bring you closer to Allah Ta'ala. So we need to have an organic experience of life. And we're losing that. And we're supposed to be people of the fitrah. We're, as Shaykh Hamza has called it in the past, the last caravan home. No one's coming after us to correct us if we don't do the job right. We have to do the job right. We have to call back to the fitrah. We have to call back to good food, to call back to good companionship, husn al-dhan, good character, and all those things. And also being in nature. Like, I'm so glad that this retreat is held in this beautiful place every year. How beautiful is that? That's intentional. Shaykh Yahya knows what he's doing. Alhamdulillah. Right? And it's like, I've been in retreats where we're not in anywhere spiritual. We're like in a theme park. It's like, how can we go there when we're like in a theme park? It doesn't feel right. Right? So, I have given you some food to digest, inshallah ta'ala. Hope you've taken notes. I encourage you to discuss amongst yourselves. And if you have any questions, of course, just come find me. I'm here, I'm around. And perhaps maybe tomorrow, since we're over time, do we have time for questions? Probably not. We do? Oh, we do. Okay. 1 or 2 questions would be great. And then if not, we can continue, inshallah ta'ala, tomorrow. So on the women's side, can we get a mic? Or you can just raise your voice, I suppose. Good question. Do we have natural strengths with these faculties? Like, people have different, like some people are more intellectual than other people, or some people have more physical prowess than other people and stuff like that. Yeah, yes, for sure. For sure. But just like with the temperaments, a person is inclined towards being a melancholic or a phlegmatic or a choleric or something. We have all of them, We have all of them inside of us, just a matter of proportion. And the task really is to become more balanced, regardless. So even if you're a melancholic or you're a choleric doer, this obsessive doer, or really angry, right? You have to learn to temper that workaholism, that anger, and bring it down. If you're kind of more phlegmatic and, there's more kasal, there's more procrastination, there's a sluggishness, there's a mildness where maybe you should be more assertive. They have to cultivate that to find their balance, so on and so forth. But we have all of them. But yeah, for sure, people are given different gifts, for sure. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, Lisa. As an adult or like children? Oh, as an adult. Yeah. Get out more. We have to just, it's mujahada. Oh, the question was, how do we as adults in schooling that are constantly getting this kind of programming, and how do we kind of fight against it or balance it out? And really, it's just a matter of consciousness. Some people, are not affected by that. I know some people that went to, the Western academy, Western schools, and they maintain, they just didn't engage. I went to school before, like everything was like Zoom, before it was Zoom and stuff. So everything, you had to be in class. Like it wasn't recorded. You'll miss class. You'll miss the whole school, the whole course if you didn't go. So you had to be there in person, and you had to walk to class, and you had to talk to people in real life. And so really focusing on that, like now the trend is everything's virtual. Everything is just done on Zoom. You can be in your pajamas down here, and you can just wear like a dusty old button up here, and then just show up and smile and be on just watching, The Godfather on your second screen or something. And this is just a joke. It's becoming a joke. It's like, no, go to school and like sit in the park and like review your notes and like have a bite with a friend, like in person. It's like, it's those small decisions, inshallah ta'ala, that make it really worth it. Really make the change. It's always the small changes. And it's a perspectival shift ultimately. It's just you change your perspective on everything. Make intention. Like, I'm going to choose, if I have the choice of the virtual or the real, I'm going to choose the real every single time, inshallah ta'ala. Unless it's like a total inconvenience and stuff, right? Be reasonable as well. Any questions on the brother's side? Between afwan, ru'ya. From what my understanding, the question is, what faculties are active when you're sleeping? And how do you differentiate between a ru'ya and a hulum? It's a good question. I'd probably have to check on the second one. The first one, though, for sure, we know that al-quwwa al-khayaliyya is active. Al-quwwa al-khayaliyya is active. So the imaginal faculty is active in dreams, and that's what we're taught is basically the world of the barzakh within you, is the imaginal. And so that's what's opening up. So that's why a lot of people, they'll have dreams of things that they experienced in the world. It's just kind of a regurgitation of that day's stuff, right? Because al-hiss al-mushtarak took the day's experience and made it into an image, put it in the khayali, and al-quwwa al-khayaliyya, excuse me, and then you kind of just explored that for half an hour in dream world. Yeah. So I suppose, we can say that, al-quwwa al-khayaliyya is drawing from above and drawing from below. So if it's something from above, it's going to be a higher ru'ya. Where if it's just a normal hulum dream, it's be something just from the content of your normal experience. Or maybe another image that has been implanted or projected onto your quwwa al-khayaliyya from a TV show or something. I'd have to review that, but I'm pretty sure that's in the direction. Allah ta'ala alam. Was that clear? Yeah, afwan, Sayyid Ahmed. Not sure. I think the only way I know the question was, is there any way to clear the quwwa al-khayaliyya from all these images from Seinfeld, The Simpsons, and stuff like that? Probably not fully, but you can substitute. You can kind of crowd them out by creating new tayyib images, new tayyib memories, inshallah ta'ala. You can. Yes, sister? You have the mic now. Could you please repeat it?
Not here. My question was, you can experience unnatural high amounts of dopamine or happiness from social media platforms, and when you experience them in real life, does the quality kind of go down because you experience such high levels from other places?
Yeah, the threshold can be definitely increased, so it takes more to feel more, definitely, but it goes the other way. So if you go on a fast and you struggle with the detoxification kind of, experience, as that threshold lowers, you can reestablish it. And like one of the ways that, for example, that's maybe a lot of us have experienced that is if we have a sugar tooth, a sweet tooth, and then you go like keto, let's say, for a month. Anyone done that before? Yeah, I've done that before too. It's awesome because that first bite, mine was of an apple. Blast off. It was incredible. You know what I mean? It was incredible. So you can definitely reset it. But it's a big problem, right? Because if you don't reset it, you have to do more to just get like a morsel of that dopamine hit. And people start losing their minds in pursuit of that and losing their haya in pursuit of that. And we ask Allah Ta'ala for afiyah and sitr, right? But yeah, it's the same way it can adapt up, it can adapt back. Alhamdulillah, we're resilient. So there shouldn't be any despair about that. But really intention, we ask Allah Ta'ala for tawfiq. And finding a way to substitute these daily activities with something more wholesome and natural, tabi'i, more sensory, again, more sensory. Think more sensory. And become like in the moded, like when you're in the moded, like be in the moded in your body. Feel, like close your eyes and feel it flowing through you. I mean, yesterday with Sidi Nadir hitting the drum, I felt the drum was like hitting my heart. Boom, just felt it. It's beautiful. Be there, taste it, feel it, hear it, see it. That's how we create new images. And that's for our children when they're with us, and they should be with us in these occasions. They form new images, and it's like it's like a foundational reality for them. And then forever it'll be a point of nostalgia. It'll just, every time they hear the Burda, it just reminds them of the time where I was with Mama and Baba at the retreat and I saw them both happy and it was so festive, it smelled so good, everyone's happy and everyone's beaming with light and their hearts will be just beaming with nostalgia, right? And they'll carry that forever, inshallah ta'ala. Alhamdulillah. Yes. Yeah. Is emotion? Is emotion? I didn't hear the second part, sorry. Is emotion wahmiya or khayaliya? It's neither. Emotion's neither. Yeah. It's neither. You can have emotions that are galvanized by these experiences, but they're not associated with one or the other exactly. So you like wahmi, like for example, it might be fear, right? You see something of a threat and then you mobilize to correct it or to avoid it, to beat it, to fight or flight basically with it. But it could also be sadness. It could be avoiding sadness. You can feel sadness. It doesn't have to be one emotion. Emotions are kind of in parallel to all these. We can talk about that inshallah tomorrow or the day after. Thank you. Good question. Yes.
ADHD are things that affect their ability to process that natural reality and take in those experiences regularly.
Yeah, good question. So the question was for people with ADHD, is there a way to help them be able to take in more of those experiences without getting overwhelmed? And that's a really good question, right? Because in ADHD, there's a hyperreactivity and hypersensitivity. There's a hypercompensation in the state. You're hyper, you're active, and usually it turns on and off. Like you can be really hypo probably as well. And then there's moments where it just amps up, maybe like in the evening times probably, right? So when I see a kid, so people will bring me their kids. Oh, he's always jostling around in his chair and fumbling, and he can't sit still, and there's so much. Sitting still is a problem for that child. Like it's actually like jail for them. Like I need to go, there's so much baraka and haraka in them. Like I need to move. So with ADHD people, I mean, there's so many things that we could talk about. But the one thing that I like to emphasize the most with ADHD is movement. Because there's so much energy in you, right? All of us with that tendency, it's like, I tend towards ADHD. I need to move daily. If I don't, it's a problem. It's really a problem for me. Like spiritually and emotionally, relationally, everything. Like I work, my emails don't get done. Like everything just suffers if I don't move my body every single day. And when I do, my work gets done and I can sleep soundly, right? So there's a lot we can talk about. But like, again, having a sensory experience in the world, but like I would bring in motion with it too, activity. There's so much that we can do with our bodies that's sensory. Climbing a rope. If you climb a rope, the climbing walls? If you climb for an hour, go home, you're knocked out. I guarantee you. You're not going to be ADHD. You're not. You're going to be exhausted. And it's to be a good exhaustion. You're going to wake up with that nice tense soreness and I'm going to do that again. And it's so tactile, and it takes so many different, your wahmi is online there, because it's like, there's a threat of falling, right? And there's all this really interesting core sensory experience. It's novel. So it's getting out to the world. It's actually getting out into the world. And that will be your gift, and that will balance you. Absolutely. And that's in conjunction, of course, with diet, and you can use herbs and homeopathy, and even medications in certain instances, but that's what I would share. Hope that's helpful. Allah bless you. So that's it for today. Forgive me. I know there's more questions. We'll get to them inshallah ta'ala tomorrow. And you can catch me anytime I'm around, inshallah ta'ala, if you have questions. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.